We're now going to work through a mixed setup together. So make sure that you've already worked through ordering setups and grouping setups before you tackle this one, since we're going to be combining the two tasks into one setup here. So let's start by examining the introductory passage to understand what we're being asked to do. The passage tells us a radio station is planning a program in which a total of 6 politicians, Fallon, Greer, Hernandez, Kim, Lewis, and Munson, will be interviewed. The program will consist of exactly 4 segments. At least one of the politicians will be interviewed in each segment, and none will be interviewed in more than one segment. The following constraints apply. Before we look at the rules, let's understand what's going on and then build a rough sketch to reflect what we understand the situation to be. So first, our players are 6 politicians, so it's a pretty good idea to take inventory of them by writing a list of their initials. We have Fallon, Greer, Hernandez, Kim, Lewis, and Munson. Next, we can ask ourselves what we're doing with these politicians. And in this setup, we're grouping them into 4 segments. Since the order of the segments matters, given that this is one single program that's broken into 4 segments, that means that this is a mixed setup. If we'd had 4 politicians and 4 segments, one right after another, then this would actually have been a classic ordering setup. But in this case, we have 6 politicians for 4 segments, so that means that some of them will have to be grouped together. Now, for a mixed setup that involves grouping and ordering like this, it can be really helpful to look at the ordering part first and then try to figure out how the grouping aspect fits in. So, knowing that we have 4 segments, we can draw a blank for each segment and number them. All right, now let's think about the grouping. With 6 politicians and 4 segments, how many blanks do we still have left to place? 2. What does that mean for our possibilities? Well, either one segment gets 3 politicians and the rest of the segments get 1 politician each, or 2 segments get 2 politicians each, and then 2 segments get 1 politician each. So we're looking at 3, 1, 1, and 1 in some kind of order, or 2, 2, 1, and 1. And again, we wouldn't know the order. So now we know that the maximum number of politicians interviewed in any given segment has to be 3, and we can mark that if we're worried that we'll forget. So for our diagram, if we were to find out that a segment had more than 1 politician, we could draw additional blanks underneath the corresponding segment number. And that gives us a really good starting framework in terms of the numbers. And now we can hope that the rules will give us information that allows us to deduce even more about the numbers. At this point, we have a basic diagram, so let's go ahead and move on to the rules. Our first rule is an ordering rule, and it tells us that Hernandez must be interviewed in a segment that is earlier than any segment in which Fallon or Munson is interviewed. Well, what does this mean? It means that Hernandez is in an earlier segment than Fallon, and that Hernandez is in an earlier segment than Munson. So we can make a note of this so we don't forget, like this. It's important to note that we don't know how Munson and Fallon relate to each other. Munson and Fallon could be on the same day, or they could be on separate days, with either Munson earlier than Fallon or Fallon earlier than Munson. Even with these uncertainties, we can start making deductions right away. So think, who can't be in the 4th segment based on this rule? Hernandez can't be in the 4th segment, since Hernandez has to be in an earlier segment than at least 2 people. Be careful though. Hernandez could be in the 3rd segment if Fallon and Munson are together in the 4th segment. So this is all we know so far about where Hernandez can't go. And what about Fallon and Munson? We know that they can't be in the 1st segment, again, because Hernandez has to be in an earlier segment than both of them, which would be impossible if either Fallon or Munson were first. Our second rule is a grouping rule, and it tells us that Kim and Munson must be interviewed in the same segment as each other. Normally, we would note down a separate rule that Kim and Munson are a pair, but here we can actually save a bit of time by noticing that we just learned about Munson in the first rule. So we can actually combine rule number 2 with rule number 1 like this. And our group of politicians is getting bigger, which means we know more. In which segment can Kim not be interviewed? In segment 1, because Kim has to be sometime later than Hernandez. We now know of 3 politicians who can't be in segment 1. The third and final rule is that more of the politicians must be interviewed in the first segment than in the second segment. This is huge. It tells us a lot. We can deduce that the first segment must have at least 2 politicians, and maybe it even has 3. And if the first segment had 3 politicians, then all of the other segments would have to have 1 politician each. So that means we know that the only segment that even could have 3 politicians is the first one, since the numbers combinations are either 2211 or 3111. We also know that if the first segment had 2 politicians and not 3, then the second segment would still have only 1 politician. So we can deduce that the second segment must have only 1 politician in any case. And we can mark this in any number of ways. I like closing off the column with double lines to remind myself that no more blanks can ever be placed there. You can choose whatever works best for you. Let's see what else we can deduce by revisiting some of the rules, now that we have some stronger number guidelines. We learned that Munson and Kim are together and that they're sometime after Hernandez. Well, we just deduced that there can be only 1 politician interviewed in segment 2. This tells us that the Munson and Kim pair, which we know can't be in the first segment, must be together at some point in the third or fourth segment. So, it's no longer a possibility that there are 3 politicians in the first segment. We know that there must be only 2 politicians in segment 1, and either 2 politicians in segment 3 or in segment 4. That means that we're limited to only 2 scenarios. So if you like, we could build them out in order to see everything more clearly. In scenario 1, we'll put Munson and Kim in segment 3, and in scenario 2, we'll put Munson and Kim in scenario 4. These are the only 2 places that the Munson and Kim pair can go, which is why it's a good idea for us to build out these 2 scenarios. Now we can see a lot more. What else? Since we now know that no segment can include 3 politicians, we can look at our grouping here and see that Fallon and the Munson-Kim pair can't be together. Why is this important? Well, since they have to be on separate days, that means that there are at least 2 segments after Hernandez is interviewed. So now we know that Hernandez can't be interviewed on day 3. To recap, we just set up a mixed task that involves ordering and grouping. We took the numbers guidelines that we were given in the last rule and made sure to get all of the information from it that we possibly could. And that allowed us to understand that only 2 scenarios involving Munson and Kim are possible. We took our time and looked at the implications of each rule, making sure to include deductions about where elements can't go, not just where they can go. So we are in a really strong position to move to the questions with this initial diagram that we're going to use for support.